Hey, hope you're doing well. Andy here from Drive Steady, and today I'm reviewing the Porsche Panamera GTS and sharing with you all of its details and my thoughts on the interior, exterior, and of course, taking it for a drive. So let's get started with this review of the Porsche Panamera GTS. Alright, so let's get started with the review by first thanking Porsche of downtown LA for giving me access to this Panamera GTS. If you happen to be interested in a Porsche product, make sure you give them a call. I've left their information in the description below. Now, the Panamera finds itself in a very interesting place because it's decreased in popularity ever so slowly in the past couple of years. And due to various factors, but one of them being because of the popularity of another car within the Porsche brand, and that is the Taycan. So ever since the Taycan was introduced, the Panamera's popularity has been decreasing year over year to a point where the Panamera sales have basically been cut in half, almost 40% from what they were prior to the Taycan. But putting aside the fact that the Taycan is now available, doesn't mean that the Panamera is some irrelevant car where it doesn't have a space. In fact, I think it is one of the best, if not the best, looking four-door coupe on the market today, but I have to admit I do prefer the sport wagon style layout or the sport turismo according to Porsche speak compared to the hatchback. But hatchback or wagon, I think the Panamera is still a fantastic looking car, especially in this GTS trim level. Alright, so one of the selling points for the GTS trim level is the fact that Porsche puts a V8 in it. In fact, it is the cheapest way to get a V8 in your Panamera. The next model up or the next trim level up is the Turbo, which is significantly more expensive than the GTS. Speaking of that V8, it's a 4-liter twin turbocharged V8 making 473 horsepower and 457 pounds-feet of torque, made it to an 8-speed double clutch PDK automatic transmission, and it's putting power down to all 4 wheels. Now, this is a pretty heavy car at 4,561 pounds, but that's to be expected given the Panamera's size. And all of this equates to a 0 to 60 time of 3.7 seconds and a top speed of 186 miles an hour. Now, the GTS comes baked in with some performance features that would be options in the lower trim levels, like a Sport Chrono package, and also one of the cooler ones, a Sport tuned exhaust. So let me take you around back so you can take a listen to what this thing sounds like. Alright, so as you can tell, the exhaust in the Panamera is severely limited with a rev limiter, but you'll get a better dose of that during the driving portion of the review. Now let's talk about some of the suspension bits, and this comes with the PASM Sports suspension with adaptive dampers, which means that you get a 10 millimeter lower ride height compared to a lower trim level of the Panamera, and it also has a 4D suspension system. Now, this is not the PDCC, which is also optional on the GTS. It's actually quite a sophisticated system that ties all of the suspension componentry and makes it all work together. Now, going back to PASM, the Panamera is equipped with a air suspension, so it has the ability to raise and lower itself, and you also have the ability to do it yourself from within the infotainment system. Now, switching to the wheels, these are the optional 21-inch wheels. They're actually beautiful, black painted with some silver trimming, and they contrast the white paint in this GTS beautifully. They're 21 inches on all 4 corners, thereby 9.5 up front and 11.5 in the rear. The tires that wrap them are 275s up front and 315s in the rear, so 315 section tire in this Panamera GTS, so significant tire performance in this car. Going inside the wheels, these are the turbo brakes, 15.3-inch rotors being bitten onto by a 6-piston caliper, and in the rear, 14.3 inches, 4-piston calipers, which are painted red as standard. You also have the ability to get carbon ceramics in your GTS, but those are quite inexpensive, $9,000 to $10,000. But with some of the mechanical componentry out of the way, let's switch to practicality, and I'll talk to you about the cargo space, move to the interior, and then we'll go for a quick drive. Alright, so now the cargo space in the Panamera GTS, and there are multiple ways of opening the trunk. There's a button on the interior, there's a button on the key. So long as you have the key with you, you can open it via the comfort access right here on top of the license plate. And then there's also the kicking motion you can use right here underneath the diffuser. But once you open the trunk, you're going to be greeted with 17.6, basically 18 cubic feet of space. And there's plenty of room back here. If you needed more space, the Panamera has the ability to fold down the rear seat, which expands your cargo space from 17 to 47. Now this is a really large amount of space. When you fold the seats down, you can easily fit multiple pieces of luggage with you. This is even Home Depot spec type of cargo space. You can fold the seats down, go and get your home improvement goods and put them in your 400 and some odd horsepower GTS and just drive home. So there's a lot of practicality built into this. You also have a 12-volt outlet here, so it's a really nice size trunk in the GTS. And as far as closing the trunk, because it's electronic opening, means it's electronic closing. So a button right here closes the trunk for you. And interestingly, the Porsche electronic trunk has a beeping sound when it's closing. I haven't noticed that in any of the other German manufacturers. But nonetheless, now let's move to the interior and I'll give you my perspective of what's going on in there. All right, so now the interior of the Panamera GTS, starting off with the quality and design topic. And the design in here is fantastic. I really like the way Porsche does their interiors on some of their non-911 cars, even though the 911s are pretty similar. But cars like the Taycan and the Panamera, the Macan, the Cayenne, they all have a very similar interior, specifically the Panamera and the Cayenne do. And I absolutely love this interior design. It's so simple. The screen is flush to the dash. There aren't too many buttons. Actually, there's basically no buttons. Everything is touch sensitive, touch capacitive. Very few buttons on the steering wheel, and this is the sport steering wheel, which is also very cool. But the design of it is one of my favorite interiors. It's so simple and clean. It might use a little bit of flair, maybe if you're looking for something more interesting with a different color. This does have the all black interior, but that's subjective. Now the quality, and this is the base level leather, there is no upgrades in here. It is fantastic. For the price point, I think it meets expectation. The base price of the GTS is $140,000. I believe it's that much, but nonetheless, it's an expensive car, and at least from what I can see, the leather is really nice. There's a lot of soft touch here. There isn't a lot of plastic. There is obviously some here down below, but I've driven some much more expensive cars that have cheaper looking interiors than this GTS. So the quality is also very nice. There are nice metals here for the knobs and the switches. So very good, thumbs up from me for sure. Now the seats and the overall comfort and the size. Starting off with the size, so I'm 5'11". This is a perfect size car. I feel like I have plenty of space with the passenger here, and overall as a driver compartment. The steering wheel adjusts forward, backward electronically. The seat is the 18-way seat as standards. They're fantastic. They're my favorite Porsche seat. They're extremely comfortable. They have infinite levels of adjustability. Well, not infinite, 18 ways, but you get the picture here. It's a really comfortable seat. This does come standard with heated seats. This car has the optional ventilated seats as well. Now switching on over into the tech, there are 3 screens in here. There are 2 in the gauge cluster, 2 smaller screens flanking the tachometer, the analog tachometer in the center, and then the infotainment screen, which is 12.3 inches. Now the gauge cluster is great. It's basically the same unit as what you would get in the 992 911, but it suffers from the same thing as that car. The outer gauge pods are basically not visible because they're being blocked by the steering wheel. I'm not sure what Porsche is going to do to fix this in the next generation, but nonetheless it has the same issue as the 992. Now switching on over into the infotainment system, The screen is fantastic from a design and from a usability standpoint. It's touchscreen, it's flush with the dash, as I mentioned. The interface itself is fantastic. It's very responsive. Everything works nicely. The infotainment system, PCM from Porsche, I like a lot. I got very used to it very quickly. Everything is laid out here on the side with the shortcut keys, and then once you're inside the menus, it's a very simple infotainment system to get used to and understand. Everything is just laid out very simply. The navigation, the map, everything is crisp and very clear, easy to read. Very, very nice. The screen itself is actually very high definition and very crisp. And the nice thing about it is it doesn't have a super glossy glass finish. So your fingerprints are somewhat prevented. You still get them, but not as bad as some of the other glossy finish screens. Now, just in case you didn't like the Porsche infotainment system, you have the ability to run wireless Apple CarPlay. But if you're an Android user, you still have that, but it's wired. You have to plug it in with the Porsche PCM. Now, some of the other things, the shortcut keys, this whole center section, I consider technology because it's all touch capacitive and it screens. There are basically no buttons here in the center section. And it's very nice. I love the shortcut keys up here at the top because it gives me immediate access to the screens or to the portions of the infotainment system that I want to go to. Navigation, I've got a button. Phone, I've got a button. Media, I've got a button. I could just click it. I don't have to do anything else with the infotainment system besides just clicking these buttons, and then I'm set. Now, one of the cooler things that I discovered in the Panamera GTS is with the climate control system. So there's a center vent here right above these shortcut keys I just talked about. And this vent you control using the screen, the infotainment screen itself. Now, some people might find this annoying. Just give me a little knob to control it. But it's actually really cool. You have the ability to use this screen to adjust the direction in which the air is blowing on from this center screen, and it electronically moves. It's just really cool, and another sign that technology is taking over interiors. This is something that maybe 10 years down the road is going to be a real headache for the owner of this Panamera and maybe other Panameras. I'm not sure if this is just for the GTS. I'm sure it's not. It's probably in all of the Panameras, but that's just maybe a maintenance nightmare for all Panamera models, maybe a decade down the road when that electronic switch goes bad. But nonetheless, that's the tech portions. Now, as far as some of the other details and amenities in the GTS, you do get a standard panoramic roof, which is always nice. For the front seat, it kind of makes it a more airy interior, and the backseat passengers have something cool to look outside at night or even during the day. Looking at the window sticker, this does have the premium package as well. The nicest feature, or the two nice features for me, soft closing doors. I love soft closing doors. And the 4-zone climate control, so a single zone for each occupant in the Panamera. And in addition to that, it's got the rear 2+1 seat, which costs $1,000. So you can have 5 people sit in your Panamera. Before, the 4-door coupe design was only 4 occupants, 4 bucket seats. But now you can fit 5 people in a Panamera. And speaking of the back seats, I'll move to that here in a second. As far as charging goes, you do have one USB type A outlet here. You have wireless charging as well. So wireless charging or charging in general is covered for the front passenger. Oh, and there is a 12-volt outlet just in case you wanted to fast charge, because these Type-C chargers are not fast charging USB outlets. So now with the front area out of the way, now let's move to the back seat and I'll give you my perspective of what's going on there. All right, so now the back seats of the Panamera before we go on to the driving portion. And let me tell you about the overall size back here. So I'm 5'11". I adjusted the seat comfortably in front of me for my seating position. And you can see here that I have plenty of leg room. As far as headroom, my hair is maybe about 1 inch or 2 away from the ceiling. So somebody 6 feet tall could probably sit in here comfortably, at least without touching their hair or maybe their skull. Now, the overall seating comfort is very, very good. The seat cushioning in the back seat is a lot softer than it is in the front seat, meaning these back seats are extremely comfortable, and I would say they're more comfortable than the front seats. I also saw this in the Cayenne that I drove, the Turbo SE Hybrid. And it's the same thing in here. These back seats are much softer or much cushionier, for the lack of a better term, than the front seat. There are some other amenities. Actually, before I move on to the amenities, the seat or the size here, the width, 2 people will fit in here just fine. A third person is probably going to be a squeeze. I have to say it's not the widest interior back here. You're probably going to have some issues with shoulder room. But actually, let me switch on over here to give you a perspective of this 2+1 seating configuration. And surprisingly, I can totally sit up in this 2+1 center section here. My head is not touching the ceiling. I do sit a little bit higher than obviously the left and the right passengers, but I do have my own seat belt and it's quite comfortable here in the center. So coming back to this side, let me give you the amenities now. So charging, there are 3 USB Type-C outlets right here. You have 4 climate control zones as a part of the premium package, and it's all controlled via this screen here with these great looking knobs, these metal looking knobs. You also have heated seats back here. This is also optional. And then there are sunshades, so you can control the shade of the panoramic roof independently of what's going on in the front, and that's fantastic. You also have a shade here which Porsche has very cleverly incorporated into the window switch, so you push it down softly and that operates the little shade. If you push it down hard, that operates the window. So it's a really nice way of Porsche incorporating 2 functions into 1 button to declutter it a little bit. Otherwise, you have a center area here with 2 cup holders. It's actually a small armrest here, but nonetheless it does its purpose. So that's basically it on the interior. I really like this space. It's a really nice size. The quality is extremely high. The comfort is also very, very good, especially in these back seats. Very, very comfortable back seats. The amenities, the technology, everything is as I would expect in this price point. Now, one of the things, maybe if we really wanted to get nitpicky, it doesn't have massaging seats. So maybe throw in some massaging seats for the $140,000 price tag. But again, I'm just nitpicking there. Otherwise, great interior. So with that out of the way, let's go to the driving portion and see what this thing feels like behind the wheel. Alright, so now the driving portion of the review, and as always, this is what the key looks like. Just an ordinary Porsche key that you can keep in your pocket because this one has keyless entry now. And of course the ignition is on the left. Now as far as visibility goes, a fantastic visibility all around you. This thing has an excellent 360-degree camera with multiple viewing angles, and there are additional safety monitors, blind spot assist, all of that stuff, so no issues with safety features. Now as far as the price goes, window sticker $148,380, so that is roughly almost $10,000 of options. And as I didn't mention earlier, but this thing has rear wheel steering, rear axle steering with Power Steering Plus. So let's see how that feels on the road. Let's go ahead and turn this thing on and go for a quick spin. Start, stop, or ignition key substitute here on the left. Turn it right, fires up. Nice V8 rumble on the startup. Alrighty, AC is on. It is extremely hot in SoCal today. It's actually been really hot in SoCal recently. I don't know why, but anyways, let's go ahead and see what this thing is about. And setting off initially, it's a very smooth ride. You get a really nice feel out of it. There's plenty of download torque to get you moving. Of course, it says almost 500 pounds-feet of torque, and with the V8, it's too nicely to get you going immediately. So, speaking of immediately, I'm gonna get some straight road right off the bat. First gear. Let's go. Oh, traction kicking in. Man, what a pretty good brake. Downshift, tunnel downshift, very good. Ooh, there's some bite there with the transmission on the upshift with this PDK. All right, so this is a properly fast car. Downshift, it does do the rev match, very nice. So this is a really fast car. Quite certainly faster than that, what do they say, 3.7 seconds. I'm sure if somebody was to use official timing gear, you would be able to beat that 3.7 seconds. So this gives a fantastic sensation of speed. It really does pull you back. The needle climbed so fast, I missed the upshift and it killed the gas, kind of giving me that initial shove. So let me see if I could get it right this time. Come on, Andy, get it right. Yeah, there you go. Much better. Oh, wow. When you get that shift, the thrust and the initial takeoff feel much better. Well, of course, you're not missing that shift. Wow. Traction kicking in. Missed it again. Brakes, stand on them, really nice brakes. All right, oh, one thing I forgot to do, let's turn on sport response, and that gives you full response for 20 seconds. Gas, wow, it's so... Wow. I wasn't expecting sport response to feel that much faster, but it certainly gives you a larger kick in the pants with it enabled. Man, that was... Yeah, you can certainly feel the difference with the sport response on. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this back into normal mode and tell you about the rest of it. And the AC, man, it's really hot in here. Car's making me sweat. Good car. All right, so speed is fantastic. As you could tell there, definitely faster than advertised. I would be willing to put some money on the fact that this is faster than advertised. But now, moving on. The transmission, I'm not going to talk too much about it. It's the fantastic PDK, upshifts, downshifts. Whether you're doing it, it's doing it. It does it really nicely. I had a chance to drive it in automatic mode, and it's great. No issues. Now, the brake. I wish the brake had a little bit more bite right at the top of the pedal. I personally like a firm brake pedal, and this doesn't really give me that type of feedback. I really have to push it when I'm moving or when I'm going at a faster pace. I really have to slam on into the pedal for it to give me a really nice brake bite. So I wish it had a little bit more sensitivity right at the top and a little bit more feel even as well. Now, as far as steering and suspension. So the steering is effortless when I'm in normal or in sport or in comfort mode. Comfort, sport, or sport plus. I didn't feel much difference as far as additional weighting. The feedback is decent. The electric steering box from Porsche is good, and I would say it's decent in this as well. Never going to be as good as a hydraulic box, but good, gives good feedback. The suspension, and this is where I was the most curious, because after all, even if this is a Porsche, this is somewhat of a large executive four-door coupe sedan. And I thought it would be somewhat soft, cushiony, and it isn't. It isn't actually. Don't get me wrong, it is still daily drivable, but there are definite underpinnings of sportiness in the suspension, and when you put it in sport and sport plus, stiffness as well. So yeah, that was probably the most surprising thing for me. I was expecting it to be really fast because I'd read some articles about it being underrated and whatnot, and it definitely is. But the feel of the suspension, and this being a large sedan coupe, four-door coupe, kind of surprised me. Maybe I shouldn't be, because it's a Porsche, and Porsches are meant to be sporty. Most of the Porsches I've driven are sporty oriented cars, and they do have sporty suspensions and do not feel like an S-Class, or I can tell you for sure, the 850i, the M850i that I drove, the Grand Coupe, this is definitely sportier feeling than that, hands down, no questions asked. So overall, is this a good car? I think it is a great car. Overall, it delivers a great experience. I think Porsche cars and the overall experience, not just the driving dynamics, the overall experience, the infotainment system, the ergonomics, the way everything is laid out, the look, the feel, the touch points, all of these things, it's just my preference. It suits my preferences perfectly. I love the interior experience of a Porsche product, and it's no different here in the Panamera, so naturally I really like this car. Now the only thing about it is that it's expensive, so if you can fork over the cash, I don't think you'll be disappointed. So that's pretty much it. If you've got any other questions, make sure you leave me a comment down below or send me a message on Instagram at DriveSteady. Otherwise, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, drive steady.